Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for the Ohsama Sentai King-Ohger figures. These are effectively our basic figures now. This is our third year running of getting these basic little figures that are basically more or less candy toy figures, but it's nice to be able to get some sort of decently priced figures that are articulated that you can represent for your collection, especially since we're entering an era where it's more unlikely that we'll get adaptions for Power Rangers, and we might not see figures for Power Rangers, which is usually where we get them, since Japan usually doesn't do figures, so I think it's rather nice. As you can see, we have all Core 5 Rangers here, as well as a bike. The Red Ranger comes in a set with the bike, whereas the others just come on their own. You know how it is. Then I will just go over the bike at the end, but let's go ahead and dive into the figures here. They're basically par for the course for what we've been getting. You know, they're kind of this same little mold, which doesn't lend itself to being the most accurate proportion-wise. It kind of is hit and miss. Like, some of them are more accurate than others, just like with previous years. But one thing I want to highlight about these figures is I really like that because of the King-Ohger's designs are rather basic, and the way they're designed in general lends himself towards these figures because they just don't need to worry about missing so many details, and you basically have like the core detail experience, which is a really weird way of putting it compared to previous years. Like right here is Zenkaiser Black. Is also a little bit taller, just worth noting. But you can see there that, like, yes, you do have the core details on this, and you always do get the core details. So you're noticing sort of the lack of finesse for Zenkaiser Black, whereas this one, like, yeah, you notice it's not a figure art, but this has a lot less details to the suit, so it kind of leans itself towards that. While we're here and just doing size comparisons, here it is also next to a vinyl figure, so you can kind of get the idea for the size there, as well as you can probably already tell it's a smaller figure, but they're quite a bit smaller than the figure arts. So it's more like the 3-4 inch range rather than the 5-6 inch range, just so you know. Articulation-wise, it's overall pretty well detailed, or well articulated. A nice ball joint here, you got your swiveling, you got a knee joint here, little ball joint at the foot, you have a nice little ball joint at the arm. Be careful, they do kind of pop out a little bit and you kind of have to push them in, which is a little bit annoying. Swiveling, elbow joint, you have this little hinge here for the cape, and the cape basically just follows that arm, so you can do some sort of billowing in the wind poses. You got just some swiveling at the chest, and then you have a nice little ball joint at the head. So it's kind of like a little bit less articulated than a lightning figure, but you get an overall pretty solid range of motion. Other than the fact that all of their arms keep wanting to push out, like when I opened every one of them, their arms were popping out like this, and I have to push them in. They have very solid articulation compared to other ones in previous years. Like, a lot of the ones I've gotten had always had loose legs, but other than this arm problem, and even with that, their arms don't feel loose, they just need to be pushed in, but everything else feels more solid than previous years, which is overall pretty nice. And as you can see, they all just simply include their, like, individual morpher weapon just in their respective colors, just kind of like decently molded, but obviously not detailed. Just kind of your basic fare there. All right, now we got the Blue Ranger here. The articulation for all of them is the same, so I'm not going to go over the articulation for them individually, just kind of give you a general look at the figure. But you can see they honestly do a pretty solid job with these. I think actually, oddly enough, the vinyls have a little bit more of a shine, but the sheen of the plastic and the right lighting does capture a little bit of that shininess from the show, which is nice. And you have like the details of like, oh, there's the sticker there, which is the individual symbol. I'm sure when we get a figure art, it'll probably have like a little plastic overlay like they do in the show, but you have all the little details too, like the little, I could totally see them skipping and not having little details like the little emblems on the helmet for like him and for Black, but they included it, which is nice, and it makes it look overall pretty decent. Right, now we got the Black Ranger figure here. This is one of the ones where the proportions look a little bit more off, I think, because his helmet, in my opinion, just stands out a little bit more rounded in the show, so it definitely looks a little bit more off proportion-wise with the skinnier helmet and the skinnier neck. But the details on the helmet overall look pretty good. You know, have a nice kind of shiny silver there for the like antenna, and then you kind of got the like the B pattern there, which I think works out pretty well. This one, like, you kind of notice the details a little bit less because it's kind of an all black, but it makes it look rather sleek and shiny. Alright then, Papillion Ohger here. Overall pretty good looking. I think this is one of the most accurate looking ones in terms of proportion. Like, I think the helmet looks like the most well-rounded and sleek, and it doesn't have as many proportion issues for me personally in regards to like the proportion to the head and the neck and all that stuff. Like I said, these can be very hit and miss depending on, sometimes you'll have ones that are really accurate looking, or at least decent accurate looking for these, and sometimes you'll have ones that are not so much. Like, I would say within the context of this, I think this one and blue and yellow are the ones that for me are the most close to accurate. Yellow's not exactly perfect, the head goes like a little bit to a point here, but I think they're the closest accurate ones in terms of the way it looks in the show, whereas like red and black kind of suffer a little bit. It's kind of like with Dawn Brothers, like I think pink and black looked really good in the Dawn Brothers ones. I think that's in part because they were, you know, such unique proportions, whereas like, you know, Don Momotaro didn't look as good, but I think these overall look pretty decent and they stand out pretty well, and you have all the core details, like even the smaller details, like the little crests on their head, which is overall pretty nice. nice. You got the bike here, which is honestly nothing too special. It just kind of feels on par with like older like Bandai America bikes, but it overall looks fine for what it is. It's not my exact favorite design, but I think in terms of the toy, it doesn't look too cheap. Like, it has a nice shine to the plastic, which looks really good. Like, none of the paint looks too cheap or anything like that, and it makes a good display piece if you're, you know, wanting to display him riding the bike and stuff like that. And the only thing you have to do in regards to assembly is just snap on the little horns here, but that's about it. It does have kind of a gimmick of, you know, the pincers, well, pinch when you roll it, which I guess is kind of fun. You know, I'm sure that's obviously more a thing for the kids, and kids will enjoy that, but it's kind of a fun little beat. It kind of gives it a little bit of personality, but you know, it's overall solid for what it is. I kind of wish I didn't have to buy the bike to get the Red Ranger figure. I don't know if there's plans to release him on his own later. Not that I mind the bike. Again, the bike is overall okay, no problems with it, but like, if you don't want the bike or don't care about it, it kind of sucks. You have to buy kind of a deluxe version if you just want all 5 figures. But other than that, as per usual, I dig these figures. These figures aren't perfect every year, but I like being able to have them because it's nice to have an alternative to Figuarts that's not only cheaper, but, you know, with Figuarts right now, even if they're probably going to inevitably make some, they haven't been touching on anything that isn't red and 6th, so it gives you an opportunity to build a complete team for a reasonable price. And it's nice to have at least a quasi-decent articulated figure in the wake of us not probably getting Power Rangers figures in the future. Not to mention, like I said, with these exceptionally, I think are some of the strongest ones because the design of the suits kind of leans itself towards these figures to where you're not necessarily missing as many details, which is kind of nice. And the plastic kind of captures the shine as well. And not to mention, outside of the problem with their arms kind of popping out-ish, which you just have to push back in, they have the most solid feeling articulation I've had for some of these, which is really nice. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.